existe aussi un prépuce.
The movie begins in the land of Metalonia, where an ancient demon named Zal oppressed humanity and used them as his slaves. A brave warrior named Crone emerged and freed the humans using his great sword. He defeated Zal but sustained an injury to his heart that caused him to bleed for 7 days. The humans drank his blood and gained immense strength. Crone died after seeing the superhumans, and the barbarian race was formed. Several years pass, and the barbarians warm up by breaking boulders and smashing skulls. An elder emerges and informs them that they must train for their next quest. He calls a weak barbarian named Ronal and instructs him to use an axe to attack a mannequin. Ronal misses his swing, which leads to the destruction of several objects. Later, he talks to the elder as he struggles to lift a rod and refers to him as his uncle. His uncle informs him that he needs to be brave if he wants to go on quests, and some other barbarians laugh at him because he doesn't have muscles. Ronal continues complaining, but his uncle throws some weights at him. The barbarian on the guard post sees an incoming vehicle and informs the others. The barbarians prepare for battle as they man the defenses, and the elder stops the carriage as it approaches. Master Florian emerges from the carriage and informs the barbarians that he is an entertainer. The barbarians prepare to attack, but Ronal explains that Florian isn't a threat. They let him in, and Alibert, his apprentice, lusts over the women in the town. The barbarians have a party that night, and Gorak hits Ronal several times as he flirts with some women. A strange man stares at the town and rides away. He rides to Lord Volcazar and informs him that the barbarians are in their town. Ronal goes to the watchtower and decides to replace his uncle. He sees the evil army standing on the hill and tries to blow the horn, but he isn't strong enough. Volcazar instructs the men to rain fire on the town, and they shoot their catapults. The barbarians enjoy the party and wonder who ordered the fireworks. The fireballs suddenly hit them, and the elder informs them they are under attack. They rush as they try to fight, but Volcazar's men begin to trap them. Ronal hangs onto the horn as it falls, and it traps Alibert. He slides off the horn, and some soldiers prepare to attack him, but his uncle saves him. They get surrounded by soldiers, and Volcazar says the barbarians are pathetic. The elder attempts to fight Volcazar, but his sword breaks as it hits Volcazar's armor. Volcazar stabs him and instructs his men to begin moving with the captured barbarians. A soldier prepares to kill Ronal because he is small, but a horn falls and kills him. Alibert emerges while Ronal rushes to his uncle. His uncle instructs him to go to the oracle and says he's the only hope the other barbarians have. He eventually dies, and Ronal is sad as he buries him. Ronal stands and picks Gorak's invincibility potion. He sees Alibert as he walks, and Alibert insists on following him because he is interested in being on a quest. Ronal refuses, but Alibert follows him against his will. The duo arrive at a narrow mountain, climb to the top, and enter the building, where the oracle instructs Ronal to wipe him after using the toilet. He informs the duo that Volcazar's armor is impenetrable, and says only Kron's sword can damage it. Ronal gets upset as he says the legend of the sword is a joke, and the oracle gets angry. He strangles Ronal and says the sword is real and is the only weapon they can use against Volcazar. He then says only a true warrior can wield the sword and stops floating. Meanwhile, Volcazar's men take the barbarians to his castle, and Volcazar talks to Gurazul, his sorcerer. He informs Gurazul that he has captured all the barbarians, and they attempt to revive Zal. The procedure fails, and they realize that one of the barbarians is missing. Volcazar gets angry and instructs his general to find the missing barbarian as he screams. Ronal and Alibert continue, and Ronal gets annoyed by Alibert's singing. He realizes that Alibert's song is about Crone and asks him to continue singing. He then realizes that the Book of Wisdom is in Elvengard, and they decide to go and read it. The duo stumbles on several bodies on the floor, and an injured man instructs them to run for their lives. They quietly move around as they see more bodies, and a female warrior suddenly attacks them. She attacks Ronal as she asks him who he is. and he says he is a traveler. She tells him the men challenged her to a duel and decides to spare Ronal as she sees him crying. Alibert emerges and asks the warrior if she can accompany them on their quest. She realizes that Ronal is a barbarian and decides to help him as she introduces herself. She says her name is Xandra and informs them they can find a guide in the next town. The trio arrives at a town, and Xandra prepares to fight the people in the building. Ronal refuses, and she reluctantly agrees not to fight. They enter the building, and Ronal asks a fairy for a guide. She tells him there's only one left, and he walks to a different room. The guide, named Elric, behaves in a strange way as Ronal tries to ask for his help. Elric decides to help, and they meet Xandra. A man challenges her to a fight, but Ronal reminds her she promised not to cause any trouble. He tries to explain to the man, but he punches Ronal's groin. The man beats Ronal up, but Volcazar's men enter the building and attempt to apprehend him. Xandra beheads the man holding Ronal, and the building catches fire. Xandra and the others escape, and the building explodes. Volcazar plays golf in his castle, and his general calls him. He says the target is working with a great warrior, and they have escaped. Volcazar instructs him to apprehend Ronal and the warrior that's helping him. Meanwhile, the group walls through the desert, and Ronal says Elric has been leading them through the desert for days. Elric decides to communicate with a lizard, but it bites his tongue and runs away. It runs through some rocks, and they realize it leads to Elvengard's entrance. Elric says the guardians of the entrance will weigh their heights, and says the entrance will crush them if they don't meet up with the guardians' expectations. Ronal gets scared and convinces them to go around the obstacle. They reluctantly agree and climb to the top, but it splits open, and they fall. Elric informs them that they have offended the Guardians, and they run as the walls close behind them. The group narrowly escapes, and Xandra scolds Ronal as she says they don't dodge problems on a quest. Elric shows them the Elven Tower and says the Book of Wisdom is in the top chamber. Ronal remembers that he has Gorak's invincibility potion and decides to use it to get past the guards. The invincibility potion isn't enough to cover his groin, but he successfully gets past the guards and gets to the tower. Ronal goes into the tower and enters a room where several elves work. He dodges various objects and goes to the roof, where the Book of Wisdom lies. Ronal tears a page out of the Book of Wisdom and attempts to leave, but falls through the roof and lands on a mousetrap. The elf screams and calls some fairies, who shoot at Ronal with their arrows. The arrows hit his groin as he falls out of the tower and hits several objects as he slides into the river. Ronal emerges from the water with the page, and Xandra is impressed. Ronal pulls out the arrows from his groin while Elric reads the paper. He sees that Krone's sword is buried with him on the Mountain of Eternity, and Alibert says the Mountain of Eternity is close by. Xandra tells Ronal she was wrong about him and says he is brave. She sits beside him and asks how the barbarians are, and Ronal says they are strong and fearless. Xandra then opens up and says she must marry a warrior who defeats her but has defeated everyone who challenged her. The Shield Maiden elders sent her away and said she should find a husband. Ronal listens to what Xandra says and wonders how it involves love. She then tells him it feels good telling someone her problems and says she feels good talking to him. They suddenly hear a strange sound above them and wonder what it is. Ronal tries to ask Elric but sees him sleeping and wakes him up. A flying monster swoops down and grabs Elric, and Volcazar's general tries to capture Ronal. A soldier captures Xandra while Ronal and Alibert escape. They find themselves in a cave, and several women emerge and apprehend them. Alibert says the women are Amazonians, and the women take them to their queen. The Amazonians and their queen think Alibert and Ronal are ugly women, but Alibert informs them that they are men. The women celebrate, and the queen instructs them to take the men to the mating chamber. Meanwhile, Volcazar's soldiers drag Xandra into the castle, and Volcazar sees her. He touches her, but she breaks free from the soldiers and attacks him. A fight ensues, and Volcazar's weapon gets stuck between some rocks. Zandra tries to attack him with her axe, but it breaks, and he knocks her down. He threatens to kill her, but doesn't, and says she'll have to obey him because he defeated her. Meanwhile, the Amazonians return Ronal to a room as he clenches his groin and tells Alibert they'll use him tomorrow. Ronal says Zandra is in trouble and insists on saving her. Alibert isn't interested and says he wants to stay with the women, and Ronal leaves in anger. Alibert then feels bad and decides to join Ronal, but the queen enters. She tries to seduce him, but he escapes, and the guards pursue him. He then hides between rocks and is startled as he sees Elric covered in dirt. Ronal climbs to the top of the mountain and enters the cave. He walks into a tomb and sees several statues that belong to the original barbarians. Ronal sees as Crone's body holds the sword and collects it. It slips from his hand, lands on the floor, and Zandra picks it up as she emerges. Volcazar laughs as Zandra gives him the sword, and they apprehend Ronal. The soldiers take Ronal to the castle, and Gurazul takes a drop of his blood. He attempts to resurrect Zayal, and Volcazar says that Zayal will give him his divine power because he brought the children of Crone as a sacrifice. Alibert and Elric arrive at the castle and disguise themselves as guards. They enter the castle with some other guards, and Alibert sees the guards take the barbarians to the top of a mountain. He enters the castle to retrieve the sword, but some soldiers catch him and try to kill him. He distracts them with his singing and grabs the sword as he runs away. Gurazul continues the ritual, and Alibert emerges with the sword. He frees Ronal, and the general walks to him as he holds the sword. Ronal tries to attack, but misses and accidentally releases the other barbarians. The barbarians attack the soldiers, and Volcazar instructs Zandra to fight against them. Ronal stops Zandra from attacking the barbarians, and they fall into the building. He asks her if she is willing to kill the only person who cares about her because she lost a fight, and he saves her from falling rocks. She gets trapped under the rocks, and Gurazul instructs Volcazar to drink the blood of the barbarians. He drinks the blood and receives Zal's divine power. Volcazar becomes a giant demon and attacks as he says everyone will obey him. Alibert tells Ronal that Volcazar's forehead is his weakness and instructs him to stab it with the sword. Ronal gets on a flying creature, flies to his forehead, and attempts to stab him but misses. The sword falls to the ground, but Zandra catches it and goes against Volcazar's instructions by striking his hand. He grabs her, and Ronal holds onto his hand as he lifts her up. He picks up the sword and runs to Volcazar's forehead, where he removes the mask and stabs him. Volcazar laughs as he thinks nothing happened, but he suddenly explodes and dies. The smoke clears, and Zandra rushes to Ronal, who they think is dead. The barbarians are sad, but Ronal suddenly wakes up, and they realize he isn't dead. Zandra kisses him and says he has won her heart, and they all celebrate. The barbarians return to their town, where Elric gives them massages, and Alibert becomes a ladies' man. Ronal gets married to Zandra, and the barbarians call him the bravest of them all. The end. Thank you for watching. Check out these other videos and make sure to subscribe and tap the bell to be notified about our latest videos. See you next time.